and welcome. I'm Antonina Antosha and you are watching Head to Head on UATV. Ukraine has been blessed by a temporarily continental climate and a vast variety of lands suitable for agriculture. But in order to benefit from such wealth of nature, it should be carefully protected and clear rules of safety usage should be adopted. How to work out such rules, and is climate change a real threat nowadays? To discuss these issues, we're joined in the studio today by Tamara Kutonova, ecologist and international consultant of the UNEP, United Nations Environment Programme. Hello, Tamara, and thank you for coming.
Hello.
So first of all, I would like you, for our audience and for everybody else, to outline what are the strengths of Ukraine agriculturally.
Well, it is pretty much obvious that the soil of Ukraine and the climate of Ukraine is very much favorable for agriculture. And you have heard numerous times that Ukrainian soils are so much famous that even during the World War II, the Germans were trying to export it. While, of course, this is not a feasible solution because this is only about climate and soil at one place. But what is happening now is that the land in Ukraine is degrading. We're losing it because of mismanagement of our lands, because of...
I'm sorry, mismanagement. Could you clarify that?
Mismanagement. Mismanagement means that quite a bit of our territories are covered with similar crops like wheat or sunflowers, for example. And we're not always using the crop rotation, for example. We're not always... using the organic fertilizers, also because of the drop in production of livestock, for example. We're using too much of mineral fertilizers. And
is this our way to save money, to make more profit?
To a certain extent, yes. To a certain extent, yes. So it's pretty much about the money and about control. And about control from the side of the government, because of course it is the government who has to control the strategic protection of the wealth of our country. To a certain extent, the government does such efforts, but much more should be done.
Okay, Ukraine has a very rich soil. What other natural resources can Ukraine boast of?
Well, it's a bit of strategic question out of my scope of expertise, but I would say that we do still have quite a bit of water. We still do have quite a bit of expertise, but we are losing it quite speedy as well. So these are the three main, I would say.
What can we do to stop this drain, to stop this loss, to make it stay in Ukraine?
Well, if we're speaking about soil, for example, or the water, this is something I can speak about. So here we should, of course, develop a sound and solid framework for the management of these resources, as well as we have to enforce the control over such legislation, pieces of legislation or management practices.
And this is all the task for the government, right?
This is a task for the government, truth. And here I would like to stress that the recent trend of deregulation is not really the best one for keeping these resources. On one hand, of course, our business has to be as free as possible and develop as much as possible. But on the other hand, we remember that democracy is not only about the freedom, but it is also about the obligations. So we have to keep the rules, and these are the rules not set up by the government per se, but these are the rules of the environment per se. These are the physical rules. So you cannot really trespass them. So once you trespass them, this means that you're losing your resources.
Okay, but how can we make the government and the businesses realize that we do need to follow the rules of the nature?
Well, I would not say that our government is not aware about it, not at all. On one hand, and the government, the authorities with whom I work, for example, they are aware of this. But of course, there is certain fights, there is certain there is certain lack of wish to change the rules of the game, of course. On the other hand, the government is also pretty much drained with intellectual resources, with control resources. So the government does try to change this status quo, and let's just hope that it will change. And the international community is, of course, very much of help to the government at this moment.
Okay, if you don't mind, I would like to state one of quotes of yours. You said in one of your previous interviews, climate change is a reality, and its speed in Ukraine is even slightly higher than in the rest of the world. On one hand, forests play an immense role in absorbing greenhouse gases and decreasing the speed of climate change. On the other hand, climate change does have negative impacts on forests. Could you comment?
Right, sure. Well, when we're speaking about the climate change, this is really the reality, and it is true that in 2017, for example, the average temperature during the year was higher than in the world. It was 1.1 degrees Celsius, while in the world this is 0.74 degrees Celsius. So yes, this is quite a bit. And this is, of course, not just the phenomenon of 1 year, because the Ukrainian Hydrometeorological Center is observing the temperature starting with the end of 19th century. So there is a very obvious trend in increasing the annual temperature. In terms of climate change, we always have to speak about two phenomena. One is mitigation, which means the attempt to decrease the greenhouse gases which we emit as a humanity, which we emit to the atmosphere. Right. And the another aspect of climate change management, I would say, is the adaptation to climate change, because no matter what we do in terms of mitigation, the climate change is a reality, and we have to adapt all our activities in all sectors to this reality, whether we speak about health sector or energy sector or agriculture, water management. We all have to adapt to this reality. And so, speaking about the forests, forests are unique ecosystems in terms that they do absorb quite a bit of greenhouse gases. On the other hand, if they are mismanaged, if they are aging, they become the emitters of greenhouse gases. So it means that we have really to take good care about our forests, so that they do increase their capacity to absorb these greenhouse gases, and not vice versa.
I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. I'm guessing this is not only the issue for Ukraine. This is a worldwide issue.
Right.
So maybe the international community could collaborate.
Right. This is happening. Of course. I mean, this is the global threat. This is the threat. This is the reality. The recent report by the Davos Forum, the World Economic Forum, mentioned the environmental issues and the weather patterns as in top 5 threats for 2018. So this is really the global, and of course the cooperation with the world is crucial here. Also because in Ukraine we do have signs, but this is still not enough to solve all the issues, and of course we always have to collaborate. Sure.
Okay, I assume you know the world-renowned scientist named Stephen Hawking.
Right, sure.
So he said recently that the Earth is to turn into an inhabitable place, unbearably hot, if we don't cut greenhouse gas emissions, given Venus as an example of such planet. He also said, next time you meet a climate change denier, tell them to take a trip to Venus. I will pay the fare.
Right.
So he is talking about the greenhouse gas emissions as well. Now, is there any program introduced throughout the whole world? How can we achieve the effect of cutting the greenhouse gas emissions immensely?
Right. There is the global agreement, the Paris Agreement, pretty much known, and there we have the aim of not